Welcome to the Love to Dev YouTube channel. This is Chris Love, and today I'm going to show you how to chase some memory leaks using Internet Explorer's memory profiling tools. Today I'm joined by my friend Mehul Harry. Mehul is a Developer Express product manager and works with developers building rich client applications. So Mehul, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thanks for having me on because, as you remember, last month you and I we were chatting about JavaScript memory leaks. Well, I had asked you about them, and you said, you know what, it's an important topic, and that we should actually discuss this. And you would show an example. So, can you show me what's going on with JavaScript memory leaks and how you chase them down? Because it seems kind of odd, right? I mean, these client-side applications these days, right? How
Right.
does one figure it out?
Okay, well, it's a little bit of a dark art, but what I'm going to show you is I've got an application here and I've got a pretty standard memory leak pattern in play here, and I'm going to show you how I chase it down. I'm going to teach you a little bit about some of the tricks that I've kind of come up with to kind of chase these down. The first one I want to point out is I'm using Internet Explorer's in private browsing. Every browser has the ability to do something like an in private. Chrome is called incognito, and what that does is it kind of disables some of the plugins and extensions, as well as kind of give us a kind of a clean base to start from. So I always want to start from like a clean, fresh browser. That way I don't have any kind of interference going on from like previous sessions or pages or something that might have caused something else to happen. Just gives me a clean place to start.
That's a good idea.
And we're going to go to these are the F12 tools, the developer tools in Internet Explorer. Now, all the browsers have these, and they all have something similar to this memory tab here. And they're going to give us the ability to do a profiling session, and they'll all show us this kind of graph that's being built here, and it shows us kind of the base memory. Now, 157 megs is quite a bit, and they all kind of show a different amount for the same page, which can be a little scary. Now, this isn't because the page is actually 157 megs. As we'll see here in a minute, it's only about 19 megs for the page, but I've actually been using this browser kind of building up for this recording a little bit, and so it kind of has built up a little memory footprint, so that's why I like to start with a clean, fresh one. So let me stop this and we'll start it from scratch. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a heap snapshot. And what that's going to do is it you see the memory spiking. That's this profiling tool um, logging all the memory allocations associated with this page. Now, like I said, we're right at 19 megabytes, just under it, for this page, and we've got like nearly 7,600 objects that are defined. Now, this is why I like the Internet Explorer profiler. I think it makes it a little easier to get to the possible causes of memory leaks. And it says right now we've got one potential issue. And I'm just going to go ahead, let's stop the overall profile. And it's actually kind of building a little deeper dive into our memory footprint and what it looks like right now. So I'm just going to kind of drill into this, and we can see this is pointing off to a div, and it's saying this is a disconnected node. And this is kind of a common thing in spas because you want to be adding and removing DOM elements as the application is used. And so a lot of times developers will set references to those DOM nodes, like even a jQuery reference or anything like that, but they don't do it in a way that can be cleaned up. And so the garbage collector can't clear that memory reference up, thus releasing the memory. Therefore, you get the memory leak. Now, I know in this case, this particular one is not an actual memory leak, so I'm going to kind of let that one go. But what I'm going to do is show you how to chase them down to find the one that is a real memory leak for us. So we're going
So
to do
Chris,
another
is
snapshot.
it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, Chris. This profiling. First of all, is it possible in other browsers?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, and I understand. Like for example, maybe it might not be as nice in let's say Chrome or Firefox. In terms of when I say nice, I don't know if I think Chrome. I'm not sure if it has the timeline. I use Chrome and I've seen this profile. It's a little different in there. You're right. But what really intrigues me is you said when you clicked on that number one item, right?
Right.
That's really interesting. So IE is, or at least this profiler tool is actually doing some smarts for you and saying, oh, hey, I've looked at your DOM and it looks like you've got an issue in there. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it kind of helps. I think the user experience in tracking these down, I think it does a little a little better job visualizing it. Like in Chrome, if I the last time I tried in Chrome, I think there was like red lines and yellow lines, and it wasn't like obviously clear. Um, and they seem to change the way they do this a little bit, like every release or so. So this has been pretty consistent. And these tools actually started off in Visual Studio, and then they dropped them in here. So they've kind of mature. All right. So what I'm gonna do is we took the snapshot on the home page here, and this page has got about 40 images in it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go drill into the taken here, and this is taking us to the movie details, which should be a lot smaller because we only have one image and the text. Now, the reason why the images are important, and it really shows um, how a memory leak can build up really quickly, because images are in a really highly compressed format when they're in files, but when a browser or Photoshop or Paint.net actually loads the image, it decompresses it, and that image is 5 or 10 times the size of what it is in a file. And so that's what actually gets rendered, and that's why the memory footprint can be rather large. So we started off just under 19 megs. Now we're up to 19.2, and notice we have a 2 here instead of a 1. Let me do one more view, because I always want to do a before, during, and after sort of kind of experience, so I can kind of really compare what's going on. So when you chase these down, you want to actually do things in your application and take snapshots as you go through each point. All right, so you can see we still have the 2, and I'm going to stop our profiler here, and I'm going to drop into this real quick. Now this is a lot of data that this tool is parsing through. Now before we had this one, which we kind of drilled into, but now we got this new one that's under a spa. Now, when I say it's a dark art, I know this code really intimately, so I know where to go find this stuff. Now, Mehul, if you had found this memory leak and tried to find it, you would probably have found yourself a little lost, and I found myself lost trying to chase memory leaks in other people's code. So I
Chris,
think
it is so dark that I have no idea what that PXS container home means.
exactly
I would call you up and say, Chris, what the heck is going on?
right. And I see these comments in some of the JavaScript libraries on GitHub that I follow. People trying to find memory leaks, and they get lost too. And I think you have to have a little intimate knowledge of the code you're chasing through. Now, I know exactly where this markup is. We're going to go look, and right here, I've highlighted the markup already. I know what it is. It's in that home view. And, well, let's go over here. I also know where this variable is defined. I've got this function called setUpPanorama, and in here, I'm setting it a local variable. When I say local, it's local to this particular, in this case, it's a controller object. So if you're familiar with like MVC, I've got these base controllers. And I'm setting it equal to a new instance of a panorama library, or it's actually another object. I won't go into the details of that, but inside of there, there's actually a reference to that DOM node that can't get released because this variable right here is out of scope.
So, Chris, could you go back to the profiler real quick?
Hmm.
So, like I said, I don't know your code at all. I haven't seen the sample code. Obviously, if it was my project, I'd have an idea like you do. But, you know, somebody might be wondering, okay, so you've got this disconnected node root, right?
Hmm.
And it's just pointing at this div element. That's all it's pointing to. You don't really have any other much richer information. So how did you go from that div to that object variable for panorama?
Well, okay, so I knew the code, like I said.
Right.
I knew where this possibly was in the markup. In fact, I've got a few other references to a similar one. Now, the thing is, I know this old scope. This is the reference, an internal variable to my SPA library that references the controller for the view that was being replaced. So in a single page application, you go from view to view to view to do things, right? So in this
Right.
case, I went from the home to a movie detail and then to a search view. So this old scope is the controller that um, is the previous view. Because if I'm as I'm switching views, I want to instantiate the new controller for the new view, and on the way out, I want to essentially close out the old controller from the old view.
And
Because
when you
they're
say close out, what happens to that old
well,
view?
I want to delete it effectively is what I'm doing, right? Because it's no longer needed. So the way I do the transitions in there, I have a little dance that I have to do to kind of make one go away and one come into focus effectively.
And so when you delete it from the DOM, are you just like removing a reference, or are you specifically doing something to remove from the DOM?
Okay, so
I'm just
what's
curious.
yeah, well, so what's going on? Um, when I remove a view from, I actually remove the markup that is the view. So if we actually, let's do this. I'll just right click here. We'll inspect the element just to give you a little heads up on what's going on. Here's the view code, and if I do this, you'll see this is the area that holds the content for this particular view. Around it is kind of a layout kind of deal. As I switch between views, as if we just go back, you'll see this change. You notice it's the movie views. Before it was the search view. And what I
Uh-huh.
do is I add and remove the markup for the views. But to make it kind of animated, I have to leave the old one on there while I've got the new one on there. And so there's kind of a dance that goes on. And so I have a reference in my spot library to both controllers simultaneously. And I kind of move them around and set the references accordingly and whatnot. So what's happening is I'm deleting the markup for the previous view, but in this case, that home controller was still holding a reference to the panorama control, which had the reference to the markup in it, right?
I see. So when you switched views, so not only did you know that what element and what object, but you also knew that during this action, hey, this is what I was doing. So that gave you a clue as to, oh, I'm doing this thing where I'm deleting something, and that could possibly be the issue.
Right. So in single page applications, a lot of memory leaks are created because you're kind of injecting and removing DOM elements, and you're setting those equal to variables that are not in a scope so that they can easily be reached. So
Uh, does
uh,
the framework usually take care of that for you?
you know,
Like Angular or something?
a lot of libraries and frameworks are really bad about memory leaks.
Uh,
And that's actually one of the things I do when I evaluate whether I'm going to use a library or not. If I try out some like examples and I do one of these profiles and I see a lot of memory leaks, that's probably going to make it not one I'm going to choose.
got you.
And yeah, you can show me any Angular, any Ember, any black backbone built application, and I guarantee you there's lots of memory leaks in it. jQuery has got memory leaks in it, and in the past it wasn't important because we were, loading the page, we hit a link, load a different page, and everything would kind of start all over. But a single page application, it all hangs around for a while.
Mm.
So you can really build up memory pressure, and that ultimately causes the browser to just crash or the experience to get extremely sluggish, and then it crashes. So um,
Well,
you
this
can,
is a
yeah,
great technique to learn then.
yeah, and I can crash any browser. It's just give me a chance, I'll crash it. So
So
I'll
how do we
find
fix this? How do we
sure.
fix this bug?
Well, I know how to fix this one pretty easily, so I'm going to kind of Julia Childs this one for us. All right, so here I've got this local reference to the panorama variable, and it's inside the base controller class that I'm using. And here's the panorama object that I'm using to actually drive that experience. And inside of it, it's got the reference to that DOM node that's getting removed that we're kind of hanging on to. Now I know that the problem is coming from the home view. Now I've designed my controllers to have an unload function. If you look up here, I've also got an onload. Now my SPA library will call those methods in response to kind of an unload event and an onload event. And so the onload is to be used to essentially hydrate the view, drive it so that it makes any AJAX calls it needs, whatnot, to actually build what needs to be on the screen. Unload is essentially the opposite, clean up after yourself. So what I just uncommented here is a line where I'm setting that internal panorama variable to undefined, which basically means that variable's nothing now, and so all the references in memory are now released, and the garbage collector can come along and clean it up. So let
So
me
let
just,
me ask real quick. That unload function is called per window?
well, it's actually initiated from the SPA library that I wrote as part of the transition between, I call it view swapping because I don't have a good scientific sounding cool name for it.
Uh,
So I was explaining that one view goes in, one view goes out. Is that one goes out, it triggers this event that makes this callback. If this function
gotcha.
doesn't exist, it doesn't get executed, whatnot. So, but I put it there so that you could kind of clean up after yourself. So it's just uh, good practice, if you will.
Yep.
All right, so let's go ahead and reload. I'm gonna go back to the home. We'll kind of do the exact same walkthrough we just did. Let me just reload this. All right, and we are going to run our little memory profiler. Take a snapshot. And notice it's 200, almost 250 megs. It keeps building up because we keep running the profile, and the profiler adds memory to the base. And we'll do our movie details, take a snapshot. And this time we're only going to see one up there in that top right corner.
The original one, that's not so big of a
Right,
deal.
exactly.
Or so you say.
Yeah, it may eventually I may figure it out.
Hey, look at that.
Yep, and then if we go, let's just do our search one so we are consistent.
But already it looks like we've dropped from 19 megs down to 9.
Exactly. And the reason, honestly, the reason why this is even 9 megs, um, I'm getting the data and the images from Rotten Tomatoes, and their high resolution movie posters are huge. So,
Oh, that's
yeah. Anyway, they kind of doinked me when I launched this. Oh, hey, we got another memory leak here. I bet we got the same thing on the movie view. I probably have to do it. Yep, same one.
oh, but that's great. See, now you caught and
But I know this one's on the movie detail view because I'm using the panorama on that view as well. So it's effectively the same issue, is what it is. You can see this is the panorama panels, this, and you can see the movie details, showtimes, review. And if we go back, that's these individual panels. Now if I go down to like a smaller width, which more or less for a phone, yeah, here we go. I can swipe between the panels this way. Little responsive design trick.
nice.
Yeah. So I know how to fix it. I'll what I would ultimately do here is put it down on my base class, and
Mhm.
it'll take care of it consistently for me that way. So,
Well,
but
that's
that's
great. So, I mean, anybody should at least now have an idea of, let's say you can use something else. ICE kind of nice and it gives you these snapshots, but I like that it gives you some hints as to, hey, you got possible memory leaks in your DOM, not just
right.
your DOM, in your code.
Yeah, I'm really big on web performance and things like that. So this is a big piece of that too. And I for fun sometimes just go do this on random websites. And I'm amazed. Some of these sites I can load and I'll have a gigabyte memory footprint all of a sudden from it, and there'll be like 500 of those things referenced saying that there's possible memory leaks there. And that's really scary. Uh, a lot of third-party libraries or services, like a lot of it like ad serving, things like that, they're really bad for memory leaks. They're just so the code's really poorly written. So when you're doing these applications, like you're looking at a potential third-party libraries or services to use, I always try to do a memory profile and see if you should be using them or not. You know, I think it's good practice and always do it on your own code
Hmm.
before. Yeah,
That's great advice.
yeah,
I mean, start there, right? Because it'll be easier to debug at least.
yeah. You know where your code, how your code works, or at least you should. Hopefully you can find it. And sometimes, a lot of times, if you're using third-party stuff, you'll trace it down to that third-party library. If you can fix it and do a pull request, if that's a possibility, that's great, you know? So, um, but yeah, I know where the stuff is in my code, and I can usually track them down and fix it. And sometimes it's caused me to have to re-architect some things. Um, so just, be ready to do that as well. So, Mehul, do you have any other questions or comments?
No, no, I am enlightened with your client side browser debugging. Thank you very much, Chris.
All right. Thanks a lot, and I hope you learned a little bit today.
Take
Thanks for watching this video. Please share it with your friends and followers. Also remember to subscribe to the Love to Dev channel for future video updates.